Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. And welcome back to another Reviews Without Remorse. I am Joe, as always. With me is my good buddy Dave. What's happening, brother?
I feel like I just woke up. I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm fine. I'm a little ragged, a little stressed. This moving stuff is killing me, but I'm getting there. I'm in the home stretch.
Yeah, how much more do you have to go, dude? You've moved in there for like almost a month now. I mean, shouldn't you be done by now?
You would think. Well, first of all, it's not just me, but
oh, that's right. You're helping.
Mary's moving into her place. I'm helping her move.
Right.
So and I still got stuff in the other place. It's a big old complicated thing, but and no, I'm definitely not all set up here. I mean, her place looks great, which is kind of annoying the hell out of me. We've been working on getting her all set up, and her place looks great, and I'm still surrounded by a bunch of boxes, but hey, we're gonna get there.
Well, it's good for you to help the lady out first.
Yeah, no. Story of my life. So anyway, what else is going on? Not much in the way of news. Nothing happened this week. There were no new trailers, no nothing. We got one little nugget we'll talk about. But then, we're going to talk about Shin Godzilla, the newest Godzilla movie. Well, not the American. This was the Japanese Tojo version that came out not long after the last American incarnation of Godzilla, and we will talk about it. I won't even say two words about it yet.
Yes, looking forward to that.
Light. Darkness. A balance.
So yes, let's get right into business. It was announced this past week that the brother and daughter of Carrie Fisher has given permission to Lucasfilm to use footage of Carrie Fisher to bring Leia into Episode 9 of Star Wars, which they haven't even started filming yet.
Now that's interesting. So I'm gonna guess that they shot enough of her. That's, a lot goes through my head when you say that, but you keep going first.
All right. The basic gist is this, that her brother Todd and her daughter Billie Lourd have given permission to use any recent footage if they want to use her in Episode 9. They were quoted saying, how do you take her out? You don't. It's being directed by Colin Trevorrow, which I have a lot of issues with, but we'll get to that in a second. And the response has been that they're saying The Last Jedi was not being changed in light of Carrie Fisher's death, and they wanted her to have a bigger part in Episode 9. That was the original plan. But whatever it is they're doing, who knows? But if they're basically saying to the public, yes, do what you can to get Mom and my sister into The Last Star Wars, it sounds like it's a pretty foregone conclusion. And my personal feelings about this is I'm not 100% sure. I am both a movie fan and a Star Wars fan, but I was a Star Wars fan before I was a movie fan, so the math isn't really working out very well in my head. A part of me is like, there's this movie fan part of me that's like, this is blasphemy. They shouldn't do something like this. They should let the dead be dead. And another part of me is like, I kind of really want Leia back for Episode 9. So I'm kind of in a torrent of emotions here. I like what they did for Rogue One, but in Rogue One it made sense because it had to be the younger version for obvious reasons, and they had Carrie Fisher voice the part anyway, so it's not like they didn't have the ability to use her. The Tarkin thing can be another thing entirely, but I don't know.
Did she really do the voice? Did she do the voice work for Rogue One?
Yeah.
I find that extremely hard to believe. I mean, I'm not doubting what you're saying, but how they pulled that off, I don't know. Because, I mean, again, the lady who does the voice of Angela for Family Guy did the did the voice of petite little Princess Leia in Rogue One.
Your Highness, the transmission we received. What is it they've sent us?
Hope.
There's lots of different audio tricks you can do. For Tron, for example, for Tron Legacy, I mean, have you heard the way Jeff Bridges talks today? He's got this kind of thing with his voice now. He's definitely got the old man voice.
Yeah.
But they used to give his voice a younger. They still had him voice the character, but then they de-aged him and they de-aged his voice for Tron Legacy.
Okay, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
So
they can do a lot of things.
It is possible. Yes, it is absolutely positively possible. For God's sakes, if they can make the Backstreet Boys able to sing, they can take an 80-year-old voice and make it sound like a 20-year-old.
True. True. I guess what kind, it's, I tell you, it's so funny what they're doing these days and the things that they're trying to do. Like, when you tell me that Carrie Fisher will still be in episode 9, a whirlwind of things goes through my head. Does that mean they're going to have to turn the script upside down because they're going to use previously recorded video to throw her in there? Are they going to CGI her? Are they going to do this? And, again, it's funny. Like, everybody was sort of up in arms with the CGI in Rogue One with Tarkin and everything. None of it really bothered me. I kind of thought it was pretty... I wouldn't have minded if they just recast him. It would have been fine. And frankly... I think if they put a new Princess Leia in there, just got a young girl, put the wig on her and stuff, I don't think it would have been the end of the world. I don't know why.
I apologize for interrupting you. I actually think that casting somebody different wouldn't have worked because this is a movie that the split second it ends, you can start A New Hope and have a seamless experience. I think that it would be too jarring to go from these two actors, to these whoever they cast in their place, and then start New Hope, and then it's like, what the fuck happened in between these movies? Mm-hmm. Think about 20 years from now. 20 years from now, some kid is going to be like, hey, I want to experience Star Wars, and technically speaking, Rogue One is between the prequel trilogy now.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, again, like I said, I am in no way, shape, or form pissing on what they did. It's weird because, I mean, again, you've had other situations where they've had to recast characters, and, we never really flinched because that's just kind of what you had to do back then. Now that you can do CGI, and again, the CGI it's getting there. I think everybody kind of agrees it's 90% there. Like, you're kind of just sort of rooting for it to kind of... just you guys are almost there with this.
Right.
So, yeah, it's kind of like... I mean, I've heard people say, like, if they were ever going to recast Princess Leia, the one I've heard mentioned before was the girl who plays Eleven on Stranger Things.
They said, like,
she kind of has, like, that... Yeah, like, she's kind of got that young Carrie Fisher kind of face. And I was like, you know what, I could see that. I don't know. I mean, if they recast successfully so they look pretty similar, then why not? I don't know. Like I said, I mean, because again, it's the trade-off is weird CGI and or a close-looking actor.
Right.
Neither which is perfect, is what I'm saying. So it's just kind of I don't know. So yeah. So now that you're sort of perplexed, now that you don't have Carrie Fisher again, is it in poor taste to use her in the last one? I don't. You know what? Keep Princess Leia in the whole thing. Don't. I mean, again, what are you gonna do? Bump her off in the second one?
But they're not going to make any changes to the second one, and it doesn't sound like she was destined to die in the second one. So,
no, right.
I mean, there's tricks you could use, dude. I mean, you could have an actress on the set actually acting out the stuff, and then just cover up her face. That's what they did with Tarkin. So that's why when Tarkin was on the screen and everybody was interacting with him, it worked because they actually had an actor there, and they just basically rewrote his face. That's how it's going to happen. No,
yeah, okay, makes sense. I mean, like I said, it just brings up questions, and the questions will all be answered. I'll just wait and see. I don't have any concerns either way. It's a damn shame. She couldn't have just finished it out because again, like we're so close. Like how long did it take for him to get around to doing the prequels? And then finally, Disney gets a hold, and now they're in the sprint. Now they're in the sprint to do the last 3, and now we lose her. I mean, that,
Yeah.
So
just 3 years. It would have taken just 3 years.
Right.
3 years earlier, if they had started this, we would have had it done probably correctly.
Yeah. So, but then
One day
again,
I will get my hands.
What's that?
Well, one day I will get my hands on the interdimensional travel device that Rick from Rick and Morty uses, and I will go see the true trilogy.
Yeah.
Wubba lubba dub dub!
Yeah, I tell it is funny. I really kind of wish sometimes that, well, I don't know.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, just that Force Awakens really was disappointing for me, and I kind of don't want to veer off in that just yet, but yeah, I don't know. There's a part of me that says, like, there was a perfect 9-part series there someplace, and I kind of feel like they're off to a phenomenal start, then Jedi kind of came along and like, when we were kids, you loved it, then as grown-ups, you look back and you go, oh yeah, that was pretty awful, and then, not awful, but just, that's when you felt that the derailment happened, and then you had the changes to the original trilogy in the special editions, and every single solitary one was awful. I seriously cannot. I think there was something like 1 or 2 that I was like, okay, I guess that does make a little sense, like a tiny little one. But 95% of it was just awful, which was already kind of that got you prepared for what was coming up in the prequels, and of course you got the prequels, and then you watch the prequels and you look back at Jedi and went, oh yeah, that's why that's the way it is, and so you're like, you know what, I really wish, I tell you, George Lucas, God bless him for what he did, but I don't know. There's a guy I mentioned last week about how Sony is that boss who feels that he can do your job better than you can and doesn't want to hear anything else.
Yep.
That's kind of George Lucas. That's what he doesn't want to hear anything from anybody, and he's going to do what he's going to do. Yeah. And you're going to love it whether you like it or not. So, but then on top of that, they hand off the reins to The Force Awakens, and we watch it, and it's like, and again, if that movie should be called literally, the name should not be The Force Awakens. The name should be Star Wars Episode 7, not the prequels. That is the only goal of that film, is just to prove that they are not the prequels. They're going to do everything differently than the prequels did. But in that, they forgot to make a story. Like they forgot to make an actual story that makes sense.
No, they told a J.J. Abrams story. We should deconstruct J.J. Abrams someday. The man is the master of the homage, but doesn't have an original frickin' bone in his body. I'm sorry, I just said it.
I'll give you that. I guess that's true. I don't know. It's funny too, because the Star Trek, I was really expecting not to like the Star Trek that he redid, and I thought it was pretty good. So I kind of had hopes for Star Wars.
Well, he only directed it. Directing something doesn't necessarily mean, you have passion for it. He's actually stated on many occasions he's not a Star Trek fan. He's a Star Wars fan. That's why the first 2 Star Treks look like Star Wars.
True.
But it's true. If you look at the first Star Trek movie, and granted, this is not me bagging on the new Star Trek movies. I actually like the new Star Trek movies, but if you watch the first 2 Star Trek movies and then go back and watch not the originals, but go back to the TV series, the heart of the TV series about exploration and the human condition and so on and so forth, they're not really the same. But even so, like, compare them to, let's say, the best of the Star Trek flicks, which you could honestly say was Wrath of Khan. And if you say differently, we're going to hang the fuck up, and I'm just going to walk away from you.
No, I'm with you.
So now we know what we're talking about here. If you look at that, there was that action element to it, but think of the way that story was constructed. You told a story about a captain who's feeling his age. And it's like I'm getting older. And that's Star Trek. Star Trek is more about the human condition in this fantastical environment than it is about this fantastical environment. The red matter in the first one, such a fucking J.J. Abrams trope. just this piece of thing. This thing, it does this, no explanation for it. It's like, no, that's not what Star Trek is. Star Trek tries to keep the science grounded. It's not magic, it's science.
Yeah,
that's what it's supposed to be. The red whatever, the red stuff, the red shit, whatever the hell it was, that's magic as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, and you said a lot right there. I agree with you, and I think that I've heard somebody say before, and I have to agree with this, that the Star Trek movies, some work as classical music, some work as rock and roll.
Right.
And
that's an excellent way of putting it.
Yeah, and you know what I mean? Some of them are rock songs and some are classicals, and they can work on those levels. And then there are other ones that just don't work on really any of them, and they try to sort of straddle a fence between or whatever. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think the first Star Trek that JJ did succeeds as a rock song. It's not classical music. I agree with you.
Yeah.
As far as the science goes, it was funny you say that because I was reading somewhere recently, and somebody had made the point that for the first time, and again, Star Wars was less science fiction than Star Trek. Star Trek was more science fiction, I think. Star Wars had more of a fantasy element. It had kind of like, swords and sorcery, but in space kind of thing.
Exactly.
But usually the science in Star Wars, they never really played with science too much that you had to sort of like argue. Like the Death Star, yeah, it's big and it's whatever, but okay, I'll buy it. I have no reason not to. This one, the science really gets weird with that stupid big planet now. It's a planet, and it sucks up the energy from the nearby sun, and it's like, wait a second. So it stores all this in the planet's core, and that's okay. And what happens when the sun vanishes? Does the planet now turn into an ice cube? Is there an ice age over this planet because you just wiped out the sun? Like in any other movie, you wipe out the sun, you've just sort of killed yourself.
Pretty much.
But but we can look up and see this happening, see this blow up the other planets nearby. How close are we to these planets so we can see this? And why are we not? The science in this one really did. I agree with you. If science was a JJ strong point, obviously, because the science in the new Star Wars really got wacky.
You used to accept it with Star Wars because it was that's just the universe. It's not a big deal. They're not sitting there explaining blasters or why lightsabers just happen to be able to hold their laserness at that height or anything like that. You just accepted it. And then, weirdly, in a weird way, Lucas kind of cut himself off at the knees when he tried to explain the Force as, living molecules.
Well, you know my theory about that.
Oh, do I ever.
Should I not get into that here? I'm going to totally let that slide.
we you know what? We are going to do a Star Wars retrospect, hopefully before the new Star Wars comes out. We can go through it then.
Fair enough. We will definitely get into it. So yeah, but again, I remember even in the first prequel, in the
Phantom Menace.
Thank you, the Phantom Menace. I remember the first time he sort of jabbed the lightsaber through the big metal door to sort of carve out a hole.
Yep.
That bothered me. 5 minutes into that movie, I was already saying, no, that's not how that works. You can't do that. I really didn't like that because if you watch the earlier films, there were plenty of times where the lightsabers would cut through something, sure, but there was also times when it would bounce off something. Like there's a part where Luke kind of gets him in the shoulder, in the Empire Strikes Back when they're having the lightsaber duel. There's one point where he gets Vader in the shoulder, but it kind of bounces off. But enough, Vader, shit, and he grabs his shoulder, or whatever, and now he's mad. You also saw the lightsaber bounce off things, so I never got that it would just sort of cut through anything like butter. So when I saw it in the Phantom Menace, I remember thinking no, already. I was like, nah, I don't like that. They're already getting it wrong. But yeah, the science does get a little flaky.
Yeah, but that's okay. In the original context of Star Wars, it was kind of like, it's like going to a fantasy movie and questioning dragons. You don't go to a fantasy movie and question dragons. They just exist in that environment. But if you start trying to bring those real elements in, then when people start questioning you about it, you really don't have a right to complain about people questioning you about it then.
Well, you know what it is? When you set up your own... Most movies, like even like The Matrix, like that's complete fiction. It's complete, science-y nonsense. But when you set up your own rules, then you have to stick by your rules. It's not even so much that I'm not. It's not that I'm questioning everything you're giving me. It's just if you're going to give it to me one way, one day, don't completely go back and do it a different way. Another day, you have to stick by your own ground rules.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, 100%. Wow, we went off the beaten path, didn't we?
Fix that. Well, you know what? I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, we're light on news this week, so we might as well just kind of just ramble a little bit because, just talk about some things. Because again, really not much happened this week.
I don't think that was rambling at all. I think that we actually did veer organically through the subject. I think that it worked out rather nicely.
There you go.
But since we're on...
This is kind of like, hey guys, you ever wonder what beers with Joe and Davis like? Here you go.
And we're not even drinking beer, we're drinking coffee.
That's it.
Coffee with Joe and Dave. A little less boring, but not quite.
That's it. Talk amongst yourselves. It's coffee talk. Shin Godzilla. Okay, I'm going to let you take this and run.
All right, Shin Godzilla, released 2016. And actually, it didn't get a North American release, so to speak. It got a special showing in various theaters around the country with a subtitled. I actually got to see it in a theater, which, nice. By the way, a packed house of people seeing this movie was freaking phenomenal. My kid loved it.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I would really have loved to see this on the big screen.
Oh God, yes. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was basic. They never did, as far as I know, at least, they haven't done a dubbed version. So the only version you can find, and I don't want to get into how I was able to find it, but just know that I managed to come across a Japanese Blu-ray, and I shared it with my friend here and decided that we were going to review it. So we saw the original Japanese version, subtitled, poorly subtitled, but subtitled nonetheless.
Oddly subtitled, very odd subtitles. I noticed that too, but go ahead.
It's not really an official translation, that's why. It's the best I could do under short notice. It is done by the original studio, Toho. It's them. This is their... The best way to describe it is... This is Godzilla's Casino Royale. This is them rebooting the series in a Casino Royale type way, making it modern, making it less tongue-in-cheek and more, more serious and more remembrance of the original intent of the character as opposed to what it degraded to. Because when you see the original Godzilla, which I couldn't find, but when you see the original Godzilla, it's actually a rather sombering tale about the dangers of nuclear war and stuff like that with the character. And as the character just grew, it kind of grew out of control and became this mishmash of 70s catch where, oh, look, there's Godzilla's little kid, and there's King Ghidorah, and there's Mechagodzilla, and all that other stuff. And this is taking the story back to its roots in a modern way. Not unlike the 2014 Garth Edwards movie, the American version that they did, but into Japan's hands. So these two exist kind of in their own separate universe. And I think one of the good things about the modern time is that you actually can do that. In the old days, it would be, no, we can't have two different Godzillas. That would confuse the audience. It's like, no, the audience can handle that. It's obvious the audience can handle that. So now we can have an Americanized Godzilla, and we can keep with the classic Japan Godzilla. That's what we've got here. That's what we're reviewing today. That was a long preamble.
Sorry. So I'll tell you. It's funny. I can't remember the last time when I was a kid. I totally remember me and my friends in the neighborhood when they would do like a week of Godzilla movies. Every day we were home at the same time watching the Godzilla movies, every single one. And one day it was Mechagodzilla, next day was Mothra, next day was whatever. I totally remember these, from when I was a kid. And I've seen the last couple incarnations they did, and okay, interesting things to say about those, but whatever. This one was wild. I have to tell you. Here's a question. I don't know if you know this. Is this a totally CGI Godzilla, or is this a guy in a suit, or is this a mixture of both?
It's a mixture.
Okay.
They kept with the classic elements, but they mixed it with some modern looks to give it like some real texture, so to speak. Like when Godzilla opens his mouth for the first time to fire out his ray, you notice that his mandibles kind of like spread, almost like the Predator's mouth a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
So that some of that stuff was CGI, but it is a mixture. There's some moments of actual, because the artistry in making the models in the past was one thing, but today's artistry on models is amazing, and you could do a lot of good things, and there's just some textures that just look right in natural light as opposed to CGI light. So yeah, they used both, and it makes a difference.
I'll tell you. Like I said, I saw this for the first time this week, and what blew me away the most, I think, was the idea, and we'll get into the specifics, but this is my overall thought. My first impression was like, wow. What they really managed to do was really take the original Godzilla, like the original look, concept, or whatever, and what used to be a big guy in a big rubber suit stomping on models, they somehow made it. If somebody said to them, your task is to take that Godzilla, make it look like this is completely real and really just happened, that's kind of what they did. They didn't do a whole lot to change the look of Godzilla. I mean, there was some things that were different, but overall, compared to the other incarnations we've had lately, this one looked more like the old Godzilla. It looked almost the same, which kind of blew my mind a little bit. But what they managed to do is to really give it some reality, and a sense of. I loved how they really gave it a sense of size. Like that was sort of what impressed me the most. Is you got a sense of scale, that this was a giant thing. You know what I'm saying?
What I loved was the little homages to the past, like in its, one of the things about the movie, ladies and gentlemen, is that you're basically watching the evolution of Godzilla. He starts off as this like creature that just kind of crawled out of the ocean with these giant legs, and it's got the old Godzilla big eyes and everything like that, like the original used to have. And then it slowly evolves into the terror Godzilla that we know. And it's just, it's done so lovingly. It's done so wonderfully, and it's grounded so well that you can almost accept, shit, this is real.
Yeah.
This is. It's done so well. And the thing is like the entire plot of the movie is just the story is the simplest. A nation reacts to a giant creature attack on their big city, and you would think that seems so uninteresting, especially if you're going to be reading it in subtitles. And yet the pacing and the way that they did it really, really worked. It had moments of cheese with some of the dialogue and stuff. We'll get to that in a sec, but the thing that I love about this movie is like they remembered that it's not just Godzilla's story. Godzilla is the key to the story, but it's the story of people within a world where Godzilla suddenly exists. And they used so many different methods. They had like a found footage type thing. Then they had these moments where they're, just trying to sort and then touches of humor. I mean, I gush about this movie. I enjoyed the 2014 movie for what it was, because I looked at it. It's Americanized Godzilla. It's a hell of a lot better than the '98 one. But I watched this and it just brought me so much joy. Like, a huge example. The scene at night, the first time, he throughout the movie, he's been glowing red, and they don't explain it or anything like that. They're just saying, oh, he's generating a lot of heat and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, he's just generating heat. So at nighttime comes, and there's a bunch of B-2 bombers, and they're just dropping it on him and stuff like that. And you can just see, Godzilla's just like had enough of this shit. It's like it's trying to do something. It barely understands. And the way it acted as it was doing it was just amazing. It's like, I'm not sure what's happening here, but something's happening here. So it starts going, and all of a sudden it's fire. Just fire comes out of it. And as the fire is going, the music just crescendos up into that wonderful, wonderful music soundtrack, because they used the original music from the original movie for this one. Mm-hmm. The soundtrack comes up, and suddenly the red turns white. And when I saw that, I sat in my seat and I just kind of like leaned forward, like it's gonna happen. Gripped onto my seat like nobody's business, and sure enough, he stuck his head out, and the fire turned into the laser, and there was that little sound.
Yeah.
I just lost it. I just lost it.
I tell you, you're right. And I loved how they did that, too, because it kind of started out, like, you're right. He starts morphing, and then the flame starts to come out. Then he's gushing the flame, and then it just kind of, it was like it you're right. Then it, like, pinpointed into, like, a laser sharp focus, and then, boom, there was that laser. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
It's very easy. We were just discussing, in a weird way, this is the perfect way to talk about this. We were just talking about how J.J. Abrams basically built a movie on nostalgia and played it safe. This movie also played on nostalgia, but it tried to do it in a modern way and keep it still grounded, and it succeeded as far as I'm concerned.
You know what? It's funny. Well, let me say this: as I'm listening to you talk, you and I are probably going to agree and disagree on different aspects. I kind of felt that it succeeded on a different wavelength, I think, than the way you described it originally. But what you just said about how, I think you just nailed it. Whereas J.J. Abrams will homage to what happened in the past, yet he's kind of sort of doing it at arm's length, where he's also kind of winking to the audience. Mm-hmm. Like he's taking the original material and he's doing it again, and yet there's a kind of like the way there's kind of an overemphasis on humor and things like that. I kind of felt like there was sort of a wink to the audience.
Right.
The Godzilla movie, I thought they didn't blink at all. They gave this to you and said, like, everybody in this film took it very seriously.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like this felt like we are not winking at all. This is a classic Godzilla movie, and he's in this time, and this is how people would react if this happened today. I see. I also felt, though, that when you're talking about the people and stuff, I didn't really get that sense as much as you did. I just kind of felt like, in fact, if anything, I thought, I love all this stuff with Godzilla, and then they kind of spent so much time with the government stuff and the bureaucracy and what we're gonna do and all this other stuff. I kind of felt like that was a little slow, and I kind of felt like for the most part, I was just waiting for Godzilla to come back. And I'm not saying that's a knock on it. I mean, it was. I mean, again, this is kind of like probably the reason why the Godzilla stuff works so much is because they've grounded it so much, and you need that stuff to make it grounded.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I think, it worked, and I'm not, but I kind of felt like, I didn't really get wrapped up into what the people were doing. Like, there was one point where, like, the cute girl, don't remember who she was or what she was supposed to be doing, but she sort of emerges as, I guess, the lead character, and there's, like, another guy who's kind of, he's alongside, kind of, I guess, as the two main leads, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But it took a while to get there, and even then, they weren't doing a whole hell of a lot. There was a lot of talking and stuff, but not much was going on. Really, I was kind of just waiting for them to get back to the Godzilla part. But again, I thought they really did nail. Again, see, I thought it succeeds because it's like as you say to Liam, this is what we used to do. We used to sit around and just watch monster movies, and we watched the monsters come out and just wreck the hell out of everything, and it was great. We didn't have to deal with this and that other stuff that all the movies today deal with. It was just a straight up monster movie. That's why I thought this works. It's just a straight up monster movie. It's just a guy coming out and wrecking the crap out of things. And now it's even better because he's doing it, like, it's so much more realistic, and seriously, for the guys who love, like, the Man of Steels and really just totally are enjoying the hell out of all the kind of destruction porn, whatever, this is your movie.
Yeah.
This is your movie. Forget about the other stuff, because this is awesome. And it was great. Again, I if I watch the Man of Steel and I see, like, a very similar scene where, like, the heat vision cuts through the building like butter, again, we just talked about how the science doesn't work. I don't find that to be whatever. But whatever. I don't remember Superman slicing through everything. This laser that can cut whatever. I'm not going off on that tangent. But I thought here, again, very similar things happened, but I thought that the visuals were much more realistic. I felt like it was so much less cartoony in this one. This one really felt like buildings falling, hitting other buildings and stuff like that. I thought it was really good. Like, if you like that kind of stuff, this is what you need to be looking at. Not that Man of Steel and not the Batman v Superman and not this other stuff where just kind of, you feel like you're watching cartoons, really.
Yep.
This, I thought, was much more well done. It was much more realistic looking. Like seriously, I mean, you feel like you're watching news footage at some points, watching this stuff happen. One of the things I did kind of notice, we were talking about the evolution of Godzilla and how he first comes out and he's kind of crawling up on shore, really. I remember thinking when I was watching it, when that first happened, I was kind of like, I thought this was gonna be the monster that Godzilla was gonna end up fighting or something. That this was like something like this earlier monster, and Godzilla's gonna come up later and save everybody and kill this thing.
Right.
It took me a while to realize what was like. Then when they showed him like changing into Godzilla, I was like, oh, that's what I'm looking at. I really thought that first incarnation was kind of creepy. It was almost kind of like uncomfortable. Like this thing, it comes rolling up, like moving is in this kind of caterpillar kind of way. The big eyes, like you said before, these big bug out eyes, I thought looked really, really odd. Like these kind of fish eyes that were sort of hanging out of his head. And there was a part where the gills kind of, like you said, you can see the red insides, whatever.
Yeah. And
there was some part early on where, like, the gills kind of spread and this kind of splatter of blood and guts comes out. Or it was like, ew, it was really kind of disgusting. I thought it was kind of funny. Like, I mean, honestly, it just struck me so weird. I couldn't stop thinking about, like, how weird it looked. But then later, like you said,
they actually explain that. They actually explain that, as every time he evolves, he gets to a point where he heats up so much. So literally, he's dumping the water. He would go in the water to try to cool off when he was evolving. He's literally dumping the water, radioactive water that was cooling his internal body. That's what that was.
Okay, all right, that makes I didn't have a problem with it because I thought, I mean, even like I said, he's evolving like the way like a snake would shed its skin. I have no problem with the idea that this thing would sort of discard waste product, from he's growing and doing whatever, so something gets eliminated. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. I just thought it was kind of gross.
It was terribly gross. It was fucking wonderful.
Kind of disturbingly gross. But yeah, it was kind of. But like you said, I mean, it wasn't like when if somebody gets stabbed and blood comes out, like why this was just like kind of excrement blood. It was so it was really weird.
Yeah.
But then again, like I said, again, when he evolves into the Godzilla, then it's like, oh my god, there it is. That's really cool. I thought it was great. The one thing I did think was weird though was the little T-Rex kind of like bird feet hands. Like they were kind of always in this clenched position. I thought that was sort of weird. Like, I mean, I like that you don't have a guy wearing a costume so he doesn't have the big long arms, and it was kind of like I said, more T-Rexy. But it just sort of looked weird, like it was always in that same clenched position. I kind of wasn't sure why they didn't make him use his hands more. It was kind of I thought that was sort of an odd choice.
That's actually a really good question. I hadn't really thought about it. I did. I mean, I thought that he was eventually going to evolve and then have the full hands.
Yeah.
But maybe they're saving that for like if they do a sequel where he's full hands. I mean, how cool would it? Think of it this way: you thought at first he was, somebody that Godzilla was going to fight, but it turns out it was actually Godzilla.
Right.
What if the next movie kind of has a sort of similar start, and then here comes Godzilla, with his short little stubby hands, and this other one's just got hands and like keep pushing back, and all of a sudden he just evolves, and his hands just kind of reach out and grab its throat. How fucking awesome would that be?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great. I mean, totally. Like I said, I don't. I mean, well, if it's awesome in the next one, that's not going to change this one. But still, yeah, I mean, that's fine. It's not something I had a big problem with. In fact, I think remember when I saw the first like poster, or whatever, first like pictures of this new Godzilla. It was like two things I kind of noticed. Three. One, wow, he looks just like the original Godzilla. Two, the red streaks where you can kind of sort of see. And all right, I get why that would be, so that's fine. And then three was the little tweaky hands, and I'm going, all right. Well, and I just figured, well, the picture, I'm looking at him, in a clenched position. But then when I noticed, like, as he moves, it never really changed. I thought that was kind of odd. Like it almost looks like he lost the ability to move his hands. It's almost, they almost look dead, kind of like little dead tree limbs that he can't use. But that really wouldn't make a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, I don't know. That was an interesting design choice on their part. I don't know if there's a bigger plan for it. I don't even know if they're actually going to be making a sequel to this new Godzilla or not. I just enjoyed it for what it was.
Oh yeah.
If this was a one and done, I'm very cool with that, frankly.
Hey, absolutely, because it's a big enjoyable experience. And again, I really feel like, I kind of feel like a successful reboot is when you can take your kids to see this and say, this is why we had so much fun watching this when we were kids. Like, that to me is almost...
And my son definitely took that. He enjoyed this movie. He's on such a Godzilla renaissance right now. It's not even funny. It's really fucking awesome.
I mean, I seriously, I feel like that is the textbook definition of a successful reboot, is if you can take the next generation and say, you're going to love this because I loved it when I was young, and if they can get a similar experience, that same sense of fun and good time, you've done your job.
Yep.
You've done your job, and this absolutely does that. I think it does it spectacularly, frankly.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. Now, it does have its moments of clunks.
All right, go ahead.
I gotta say this one clunk. When it hit, it took me out of the movie for just a second. Okay? There's a part where the Japanese lady, who's part Japanese, part American,
right,
is talking with some U.S. general or something like that. And I don't remember the exact line of dialogue, but it was along the lines of, if this doesn't work, your plan to be the first female president at 40 was going to go out the window. I'm like, oh, God, they went there. Why the hell did they use that type of dialogue? That just, just fell so flat with me, it took me out of the movie for like a minute. It's like, and this is not me saying I have something against, a Japanese American being president or anything like that. It just was such a clunky line.
She wanted to be the American president. That got past.
Yeah, she wanted to be an American. Yeah. She wanted to be the first 40-year-old American president of Japanese descent, and that was the whole gist of the line that they were trying to get there. Mm-hmm. And it was just like it just felt so damn clunky.
That's funny.
That was it. That was my biggest complaint about the whole movie. That one line of dialogue, it just stuck out like a sore fucking thumb.
No, the thing I really wanted to kind of harp on a little bit was I really just thought the effects were amazing.
Yeah.
I was kind of and you think by now I'd be sort of bored of it, and I am usually, but again, if you're doing a disaster movie like this and like the buildings crashing and falling, I was really shocked how realistic everything looked. I mean, they really did it. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
everything had good texture.
Yeah, I mean, they really get the logistics down. Like one building will fall into another one, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, like it stops it for just long enough, and part of it will hold together, the other part just crumbles. You know what I mean? And I kind of felt like that was really much more closer to what I think. You know what I'm saying? Like they're always shooting for that in films. You know, sometimes like a building will tip, and you're kind of looking at it saying like, all right, it wouldn't hold together that long. You know, I mean, it's made of smaller parts, so it should crumble and fall apart. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it just crumbles too fast, whatever. I really thought they got the science of this kind of down pretty good. Like everything looked really, really, believable. I mean, I think that's the part that I walk away with from this and say, wow. I mean, that, again, talk about just taking your classic Godzilla movie, same idea. Bring him on land, he wrecks everything, we try to kill him or whatever, and boy oh boy did they just nail that part of it. They made a realistic, modern look, again, and they didn't go super realistic either. They still gave him fire and laser beams and everything. They went full blown, like you said. They did not hold back. They went full blown and said, we are doing Godzilla right. But yet they made it look like it was possible. I mean, that's the part that I thought they really just nailed.
Yep. One thing about your comment about destruction, there's something to be said about the John Ford method of camera work. And the John Ford method of camera work is let the camera stay still.
Right.
Do you see what I'm getting at? Okay, this swirling around, moving the camera around the destruction and falling down with the building and stuff. So you don't necessarily need to do that.
Yeah.
You don't need to always do that. You can sometimes just let the camera just stay. Come on, 9/11, the freaking plane hitting the building. Stationary shot, one of the most horrific things you're ever going to see in your life.
Yeah.
Proof right there. The camera doesn't have to be moving. The camera can stay stationary and just take in the sight. That and fight scenes, those are the two things that some directors just don't get. You don't have to constantly be moving your camera during a fight scene. That would be like if somebody's tap dancing and you decide to just circle around their feet instead of showing their entire body. What is the point of that?
Yeah.
Let the camera just take in the shot. And to be honest with you, the static camera makes it more realistic. Because when you have the camera moving around, it's just like CGI. It just takes you. Any person with any type of movie experience will just know that doesn't look. That's not real at all. Even if it looks like the most crisp image that you're ever going to see, it takes you out of it because you know that through this destruction, the camera couldn't possibly survive that. Distance shot, watching a building fall down. That's like, oh shit, man. That's some fucked up shit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that too. And even again, not to. You mentioned like something like 9/11 where you're watching a disaster actually happen. I mean, I feel like if you're gonna do that for effect and you're gonna sort of like, I don't get the shaky cam stuff. I don't get wobbly cams, and again, it just seems so strange to me. Like because my head is not wobbling, so why does that make it realistic when you wobble the camera? I don't get it. But if you're gonna use some like, I hate found footage everything. I really do. I kind of feel like you try to make a whole movie. It was clever once or twice. Just stop with that stuff. It's awful, awful, awful. But if you're gonna use it and imply that this gives a more realistic effect because it's got that kind of like found footage, well then alternate between found footage and a steady camera, a steady stationary camera. Because if you're going to shoot the whole thing in this wobbly sort of thing, then it's like, is this found footage? Is this? Is it that? None of it makes any sense. I don't get it. I've never understood the idea of throwing a working... Again, when you wobble a camera, that means there's a cameraman holding a camera. I'm not a fly on the wall in the room anymore. I'm watching something somebody filmed. And by putting that third person in the room, it totally destroys the idea that I'm watching an intimate conversation that nobody would be there for.
Right.
It's now a reality show, and that's why I can't get into a reality show because I know it's not real because there's a guy filming this.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention the fact, like, there are these characters wind up getting into a situation. It's like, why are you still holding the camera? Why have you not dropped that freaking thing and just ran for your freaking life? Why?
Yeah.
It's like, some movies, some movies do okay with it. Some, at least try to sort of keep that reality of no, this is actually found footage stuff, and that can work. But like the Paranormal Activity movies, I kind of like the first one, and each one just kind of goes down the whole rabbit hole of, is this really found footage? It's like,
Yeah.
it gets to a point, and each one of them, it gets to a point where it's like, you would have dropped the camera.
Exactly.
You would have dropped the camera, and you would have run.
Did you, what was that movie that I saw? What was the one with the kids who get superpowers? I'm pretty sure the kid who played the Green Goblin in Amazing Spider-Man 2
he
was in it.
He was the bad guy, yes.
What was that movie called?
Chronicle.
That was it, yeah.
Yes.
That was awful. And, I was watching that thinking, this has the potential to be a really good movie if they did not do this stupid found footage. Why does this movie need to be told through the lens of found footage? I don't understand that at all. And why they think that makes it better just completely contradicts my way of thinking. I mean, like you said, they show them like they're flying through the air, right? They're flying, and somebody's holding his camera up and taking video of this. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, how about you just enjoy the moment for a second? Not everybody has to be taking video of everything. But then they would cut to like when they could not be holding their cameras, they would cut to like, well, now this is news footage, and now over here, then suddenly they're like, because they're near a 7-Eleven or a gas station, they cut to like the video camera footage from the gas station.
The closed cap,
right? The
closed
CCTV.
cap, yeah.
I'm like, what?
Which I don't.
Like, it was so jarring. I'm like, what? Again, what? This could be a good movie, but why are they forcing me to watch it through black and white cameras here or cell phone video here? I mean, it was so stupid.
Because they didn't want to give up the conceit. If they had given up the conceit that it was a found footage movie, it would have worked so much better. The plot of that movie is actually damn good.
Yeah.
And really enjoyable. And it's like the found footage aspect of it is the shame part of it. It's like, it's such a shame that this movie is found footage. Because if it wasn't found footage, Zack Snyder talks about, my movies are the deconstruction of superheroes. It's like, actually, Watchmen was, and in many ways, so was Chronicle. Chronicle is a better deconstruction of a superhero origin story than anything.
True, yeah.
And yet, it's hindered by the found footage aspect of it. That's kind of a heartbreaker to me, because I like that movie, I do, but you're right. The found footage aspect of it pulls you out of it.
Right, exactly. Like, and badly. Like you can't get absorbed in it for even a moment. It's the strangest thing ever.
Well, he went to try to do fan 4 stick, so I mean, that could tell you everything you need to know about the director.
And I tell you, I have not actually sat and watched that film, and I'm kind of.
I'm gonna make you watch that because you need to know my fucking pain.
I'm curious to watch it. I mean, again, I know it's a train wreck, and that's why I'm sort of curious to see it. But yeah, I'm kind of curious to actually, you want to hear something funny?
Yes.
I've never actually watched any of the Fantastic Four movies. I never saw any of them.
Oh, this is gonna be. You know what? This is gonna be an interesting experiment. Then I'm gonna make you watch the train wreck that is the one that came out in the past couple of years, and then I'm gonna make you watch the previous two. I'll be very curious to see how you feel about that.
I think we should throw in the Roger Corman version too.
No. Forget the Roger Corman version. Let's talk about the Roger Corman version was a licensing thing. That wasn't meant to come out.
Frankly, all of these have been. I think most of these, not for nothing, but and that's the reason why they keep pumping out these awful Spider-Man movies before this, the last two that were terrible.
Yeah.
That whole move to make movies just to hold on to the rights. I frankly think the last couple, even before this train wreck, still the same thing. They're not great movies by any stretch. And again, it's like, well, we got to hurry up and make one, or else we're going to lose the thing.
Yeah, that's the giant middle finger to Marvel, as I like to refer to it.
Yeah, pretty much.
But how the heck did we get from Godzilla? Oh, because they kind of utilized a sort of form of found footage in some of the shots, but it wasn't as jarring in this movie, and in the context that they were telling the story, I think worked.
Yeah. Completely. And frankly, as you're saying, I can't really remember any found footagey looking parts of it. I thought for the most part, the opening
on the boat when they find the boat with the map and the origami when the Coast Guard is checking the boat, the car in the tunnel, they took footage from a dash cam when the tunnel is collapsing on top of the car. Those two things.
Right. Okay.
And then the news conferences and stuff. Every once in a while they did it, but they did it in a way of this is an expansion of the story. That's all. This isn't found footage Godzilla. Don't worry.
Right. Yeah, no, very true. And incidentally, now that you mentioned the opening, I love the logos in the beginning. The classic logo look. I mean, it almost had that kind of grindhouse look, like you're purposely trying to do a throwback to the old, the old intros. I thought that was awesome. I was like, what a great way to set you up for like a classic Godzilla movie.
Agreed, 100%. Cool. Anything else to say?
No, that's it. Tojo Godzilla. I love it. I mean, again, I was very pleasantly surprised with this, and frankly, I want to watch it again on a bigger screen and with the surround sound speakers and the whole spiel because
you should.
Yeah, I mean, again, I really loved how they gave a sense of scale, and I mean, again, the visuals were just so realistic, and that really surprised me. And I guess, I'm sure somebody else is probably saying, "Oh, you're full of crap. It looked like CGI." Like, you know what? I was sold, completely sold. I thought they really did an excellent job, and I thought the creature was good. I love the new design. Like I said, the little arms were a little funny to me, but otherwise, I love that they held on to that class. Again, while every other film is trying to redo it differently and make it look different, for some reason, I don't know. But this one said, no, we're doing the old Godzilla, and they did. And I was like, that's cool. I thought that was great. So again, success. This is, again, like I said, the way to do a successful reboot, or the way you know you've had a successful reboot, if you can show this to your kids and they enjoy it the way you did, you accomplished your mission. Agreed. And I think mission accomplished with this one.
100%. Someday we should talk about special effects, because to me, like, everybody says, oh, that's such CGI, and they just kind of like dismiss it immediately. And there are cases where I can absolutely positively agree. But there are times, the way a movie is put together makes all the difference with special effects. Because if a movie is well put together, your mind makes that leap into suspending disbelief, and you can actually just enjoy it for what it is, as opposed to just sitting there and nitpicking the fuck out of it, like some people do. Mm-hmm. We do it sometimes too, but we also have the one thing that's really good about us, even to our older age, we can still do this. We have the ability that if a movie is done well enough, mentally we know we've got 30, almost 40 years of movie experience, so of course we know what special effects are. But isn't it great when you get that one movie that for just a moment just does the story and everything else so right that you actually let go and just enjoy what it is instead of sitting there saying, oh, that's special effects? Isn't that a great feeling?
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, again, I've heard people say, like, good effects versus bad effects. You know what? If the story is there, you're willing to forgive bad effects, or just, not convincing looking effects.
Right.
But when the story's not there and you get crummy special effects, oof, that's the worst.
Yep. You can have great special effects, crummy story, and people will tear it apart. You can have great story and bad sexual effects. Oh, wow, yeah. What's special effects.
Everything all right?
Went a little off the hand there. It's okay. And people would not like it, but it's rarer now to find that good combination of movies. 9 times out of 10, the movies that utilize special effects effectively, you don't even realize that they're using it. Like when Spielberg changes the sky to gray or something like that in Saving Private Ryan. Nobody ever asked him about that. Nobody questioned that. They just accepted it as it was, because that's the proper way you use special effects.
Right. Yeah, no, it's, it's funny, for all the things you notice, there's so many things they're doing now behind, like just as art direction. I think they're making a lot of aesthetic changes using CGI, which again you never notice, and it's fascinating, some of it.
Yeah, color correction alone is huge.
Sure.
It's no longer. It used to be like you were chasing the lighting. And if you decide, oh shoot, well, we missed that, we had that lighting, it was exactly 1:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday, and it was 80 degrees and blah blah blah, no clouds in the sky, and it's like, how the hell are we going to recreate that to do reshoots? And you don't need to anymore. You can actually grade the film to match the coloring.
From the just from my James Bond movies, when you say CGI, most people will think, oh yeah, like that giant tidal wave from Die Another Day that looked hideous, But when you watch some of what they're doing today, it's so subtle. The skyfall scenes when they're at the house in Scotland and it just looks bleak and the trees are really kind of hollow and that's all. A lot of that is CGI and you don't even know it. And even the part when there's a shot where Javier Bardem is walking away from the house as it's burning, and it was in the trailer, so it was pretty prominent.
Yep. That
was all CGI because he was walking away from a giant light, like this the whole
an orange light.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
There are ways to properly utilize CGI, and one of the things that I think most directors need to learn from that this movie does correctly: trust the camera. You don't have to throw it in the audience's face. Just leave the camera right there. You don't have to move it. You don't have to Michael Bay it. You don't have to circle around it like 5 different ways. Not to mention, who I feel bad for every time Michael Bay does a shot like that? The guys that are actually doing the animation. You just got to know that they're meticulously trying to do every shot. It's like, Jesus Christ, Bay, why are you moving the camera? Now I got to move the angle this way, and I got to change the paint color this way, and change the lighting that way.
Yeah.
God!
So yeah, there we go. Shin Godzilla, very excellent movie. I thought it was really good. Anything else you want to add?
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did, very much so.
I loved it very much. It was the perfect Godzilla movie that's come out in the past 20 years.
I totally agree. Easily. Definitely. All right, with that, I guess we will wrap up this episode number 8 of Reviews Without Remorse. It's funny, Reviews Without Remorse, as if we were going to pick on it, but this movie was awesome. We just gushed about it for a while, but hey.
Yeah.
When you do it right, we'll call you on it.
Yeah, we hit some of the shortcomings. You, for example, didn't find the people scene all that compelling, and I had my problem with the President of the United States thing. It's not perfect. Without remorse means that, if you do anything that takes us out of the flick, we're going to call you on it.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well then we will wrap this episode up, and we will be back next week, and I guess next week we're going to kick off another series of films to discuss, and we will have to figure out what that's going to be.
Yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, my brother, then we will leave it there.
All right, my brother from another whole set of parents, have a good night.
All right, brother, you too. See you next time. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.